Today we are going to demonstrate the correct analytical technique for pipetting using volumetric glassware. To demonstrate this, we are going to prepare a substock solution in a 100 ml volumetric flask using a stock solution of blue copper. Our first step is always to analytically rinse our volumetric glassware. We will begin with analytically rinsing our volumetric flask. The first step is to rinse the volumetric flask 3 times with RO water. We have already rinsed our volumetric flask 3 times with water. The final rinse of the volumetric flask must always be with diluent. This is the solution that you are going to fill the volumetric flask to the mark with. You must rinse your volumetric flask 3 times with the diluent. Each time, you can transfer your rinse to a large waste beaker. Once you have analytically rinsed your volumetric flask, you are now ready to pipette your stock solution. Before doing this, you can transfer an aliquot of your stock solution to a beaker. You must first analytically rinse this beaker before transferring the stock solution. Again, you would first rinse this beaker 3 times with RO water, and you must then rinse the beaker 3 times with the stock solution, transferring your rinses to the large waste beaker. You can then fill the beaker with an aliquot of stock solution. You can now prepare to pipette your stock solution. Again, we must first analytically rinse our volumetric pipette. You would first rinse 3 times with RO water. After rinsing 3 times with RO water, you are going to rinse your pipette 3 times with the stock solution. The final rinse of your volumetric pipette must always be with the analyte solution that you are about to pipette. In order to analytically rinse your pipette, draw up a small volume of the stock solution into the pipette. And while you are rinsing, it is good practice to rotate your volumetric pipette and invert back and forth a few times in order to ensure that all surfaces of the volumetric pipette have been analytically rinsed. Once your pipette is rinsed, you are now ready to transfer the stock solution to the volumetric flask. It is always good practice to pour out your stock solution from the beaker and add fresh stock solution to your beaker to pipette. The first step in pipetting will be to expel all of the air out of the bulb. You would then gently place the bulb on the top of the pipette and allow the solution to fill the volumetric pipette. Allow your pipette to fill until the solution is past the calibration line that is etched onto the pipette. You will note that your dry index finger is used to hold the top of the pipette. You will also note that we used a Kim wipe in order to wipe off the tip of the pipette. You then allow the solution to drain in the volumetric pipette until the meniscus is touching the calibration line on the volumetric pipette. You can now transfer your solution to the volumetric flask. In order to do this, ensure that the tip of the pipette is touching the side of the flask. And you will notice here that the volumetric pipette is vertical while your volumetric flask is held at an angle. At the end, you can slowly rotate the volumetric flask in order to ensure that the last drop from the pipette has been transferred into the flask. You will notice that a small volume of solution is always remaining in the volumetric pipette. You never blow this solution out of the volumetric pipette. You are now ready to fill up your volumetric flask. Again, you always fill your volumetric flask to the mark with your diluent solution. It is good practice to fill your volumetric flask to approximately the base of the stem of the flask. At this point, you can now use a plastic transfer pipette to continue to fill your volumetric flask, and you fill your flask until the meniscus of the solution is sitting directly on the calibration line that is marked on the volumetric flask. Once you have done this, you can insert your clean, dry stopper into the flask and invert back and forth approximately 15 times to ensure that your solution has been mixed. We now have successfully prepared our substock solution, and that completes our demonstration on the correct analytical techniques for pipetting using volumetric glassware.